Good afternoon, everyone. It is, geez, the 16th, Tuesday. I think it's Tuesday. I sent you guys this PowerPoint for you to look at on your new this week's modules. I want to just go over it, and so we can maybe have a better understanding of what we're talking about and what we plan to do. Um, this week we are analyzing qualitative data. This is an important session, and I just didn't want to leave it to a PowerPoint and your own devices to try to interpret what's happening. So I really do want to get into this a little bit and give you a general overview of what analyzing qualitative data means, and where and this way you can actually see or get a better picture of any kind of reports you may be reading, studies you may be looking at while you're doing your literature review, what's relevant, what's not relevant. The worst thing in the world you could do is reading a long 36-page study and finding out that it doesn't have the rich data that you're looking for, or if you don't even know what you're looking for. So here we're just going to get, and everything is pretty much similar in how it works out in the academic world when we're doing scholarly writing. So you're going to see some themes. You're going to see some things happening, and the more you look and read some studies out there, and maybe I should post some so you could take a look at. I hesitate to do that because people start getting into reading those things, and then they get overwhelmed unnecessarily when I'm just using those as examples. So maybe I will do one or two so you could actually see what qualitative data looks like in its purest form in a study. So let's just dive right back into this thing. So what we're really doing in qualitative analysis is we are collecting data. It's only the beginning of the research process, but we're going to collect the data. And once we collected this data, the information we have to research, a good researcher will organize and think about the data, understand what's happening, and see if they could find some things on this, wealth of information they've received. So you sort of try to straighten out a lot of chatter. You're trying to streamline things. And what forms do data come in? They can come in surveys or questionnaires. Be careful with surveys and questionnaires when you're doing qualitative analysis, because sometimes the questions on a survey may be a quantitative question. There may be a Likert scale. There may be something that has to do with a different sort of analysis type. So surveys, open-ended questions, those things are fine, but just be careful on doing that. You can actually get some data from newspaper clippings. Be careful on that route, because a lot of news out there is not accurate news. I've seen, as a matter of fact, let me think. I may have a video that shows how a couple of actually, I do have this video. It's a sort of a satirical look at qualitative analysis or research itself. And the person given the presenter is showing how data is transformed into newspaper clippings or to short stories you see on Morning Joe or some kind of a news outlet, and they see how they distort some of the information on it. So I'll try to find that and put that on there so you can take a look at. Personal journals are good resources for information. My favorite is doing interviews, and I like looking for transcripts and looking at the transcripts of those interviews and seeing what kind of thematic consistencies that we will come up with. So interviewing is a wonderful way to collect data. You're getting rich data, real-time data from people that are living the experience, and that's what qualitative analysis is all about. Obviously, you want to take some notes and some observations for your data. So you want to make sure that all those things are codified in some way, written down, so you don't have to rely on memory because those things can get distorted. Your attitude for the day as a researcher may skew a data point that you might have thought of differently in another day. So these are some of the basic ways you can actually find data and collect this data. So again, what we're trying to do is we're not trying to solve every question in the world. We have a question in mind, a process in mind. We want to stay straight to doing that. One of the issues that I see come across a lot of students in doing a research paper or a term paper or a dissertation is that they sort of look at things with something in mind going in, and all of a sudden they are all over the place. How many of you guys did that? I'm sure I've done it all the time. I'm looking through the internet. I'm looking through Google Scholar. I find something interesting. It takes me totally off topic, and that information may sound good to you, but it's not helping you in your um, uh, question that you've asked. So you want to stay focused on that thing because you can waste a lot of time looking at all kinds of things. You become very smart, but it's all over the place. Um, so now that you got your data, I want to preach a little bit. I think I've been preaching already. You know, this opening I just put together because I want to make sure that we have an understanding of what we're doing. So I'll do a little bit of preaching right now. So you start your analysis by getting to know your data, understanding what data you're looking for. Again, you can get lost doing this. There's so much information out there. You want to do this by listening to your tapes, the transcribed interviews. There's a really good uh, let's see, application or technology tool that I use. It's called Sonics Text, Speech to Text. You can find that I'll send you the link. But you know, I pay a little bit of a fee, and if I got a lot of information that's on a tape or a recording or something, you can actually transcribe it into text, any kind of text you want, whether it's Word or regular text. And I find that to be a real big time saver because I'm not the best typist in the world, and you guys saw that already. So having that sort of service is a good thing to have. So you want to make sure you look at this stuff, um, read it over and over again, get to know what's going on intimately. After doing this, you might have a general feeling and idea what people are saying about your results, and you get a really good understanding. But you'll be surprised at how much more information that is contained in your data once you start going deeper and deeper and beginning to look at it in a rigorous way. So you'll hear it the first time live. You'll go home and you listen to your tapes and say, okay, you know, this is boring. Let me get some coffee and listen to this stuff. Then you start writing things down, or like I do, I go to Sonics and have it transcribed. Then I read it over. Then I read it over again, and I look at it again and see if I can find some things that are really interesting, so I can really get a good analysis of what's going on. What we want to do is we want to have and I wrote this fourth bullet point down for you guys. You need to get a formal system of analysis. And how do you do that? You want to develop the data easily. Um, you want to, you know, in qualitative data analysis, you know, we're looking at in this lecture, we're looking at actually interviews more so than anything. It's heavily on interviews. You want to start looking at ways to capture similar texts. You want to capture similar anxieties or feelings or things like that. You want to capture these moments. Whether you see someone angry or happy or upset or they're finding their way. So what we do in the analysis is we use these coding techniques to find ideas. In the old days, we used to have to I used to use a highlighter with 10 different colors, 10 different color highlighter, and I start coding that way. I would highlight a word that's say if it's angry, I would put it in red, or feeling, you know, whatever it is they're saying, if it's charged up, and then highlight all of those. And if I have a lot of those red marks, I know that there's a theme going here. Whatever's happening is angering people. Or if there's, you know, if there's another word that comes to light that you see over and over again, you might highlight it in a different color. And once you start seeing things in its context, yes, number one, but then in its repetition, maybe you'll start seeing some themes develop, and you start putting them in categories and relating them to one another. So that's my preaching story to you. Now there's a lot of good programs out there that actually do that kind of legwork for you. You don't need a highlighter anymore. You can go on MaxQDR, and I'll send a link to you to take a look at that. Maybe I'll send a YouTube video thing, so you can look at what MaxQDR is. You don't have to know this for any test or anything, but it's a tool that originated in Germany or something. And what they do is it takes those similar words and puts them into areas for you to code them yourself. So a lot of the legwork is done for you, and then you could pull out words and themes and find things like that. In quantitative analysis, that's with the numbers and the all that good stuff. We use SPSS or Strata or some other program to capture that. You can actually do some of that stuff on Excel in quantitative analysis. But here we're doing qualitative analysis, and we use something like MaxQDR to help us collect this stuff as quickly as possible. Let's go to the next one. Next slide. So our lecture today, we're going to talk about organizing the data. That was that whole big deal was my my little preaching words. So we're going to organize the data, find the organizing themes and concepts, build on overarching themes of the data, ensuring reliability and validity. And you're going to see a lot of that, and that's really important, making sure that your study is reliable and valid. You'll probably see a lot more that in quantitative analysis, those words, because there's a lot, you want to be able to replicate things, and you want to be able to make sure that there's reliability in your work. Finding possible and plausible explanations for your findings, and we'll go over some subjects. I promise this won't be that long. So step one, the best way is to organize your data and go back and forth with your interview guide. Identify and differentiate between questions and topics you're trying to answer. And those that we simply included in the interview guide, as I did this one thing with an interview guide. We're not using an interview guide, but there are some things that you can use, some tools, whether you're doing something like that. You want to make sure that your interview is guided in the best way. And there's a lot of literature on that. We're not going to, that's for another class. But when you're doing a dissertation or a paper, your interview must be written down beforehand. It must be practiced on. It must be identified by the instructor or the IRB person or team to make sure that the interview is valid and that you're not going to put anybody into some issues where they may have a problem with it. So making sure your interview is put together is a good start. So you want to organize your data in that way. A model full of prioritizing, reducing, and organizing your data. You want to think inside. When you think inside the box, you're looking to get an interview. Don't try to do 20 or 30 interviews because you may be there for a long time. The study might not be financed for something like that. You might not have time. You're trying to get a paper. You're trying to get a dissertation. You're trying to defend the dissertation. You don't need to have 30, 40 interviews when one or two can suffice to that issue. Yeah, you can spend the rest of your life analyzing all that information. And believe me, when you go into the first year of a dissertation, you really want to do all this good stuff. And in your mind, you want to interview everybody in the world and want to come up with the best possible answers. That's not going to happen because there's a lot of people in the world and a lot of different answers, and you'll be analyzing for the rest of your life, and you'll never get even close to getting an entire population to give you say your study. So you want to make sure that you get enough so you're validating your work and you can move on. Thinking outside the box, once you've answered your original questions, look at other ideas and themes that may come out, and there may be some surprises for you. Look at them in terms of how they relate to your question, and in terms of future research considerations. You might in your work that you pointed to, that you're looking at, you might have uncovered something else that might be significant. And you can say, you know what, in your responses, you want to have an area of consideration for future research. That data could be organized to do that. And you'll see in a lot of papers, a lot of journal articles, you'll see at the end of the article, at the end of the journal article, they may have some future research considerations paragraphs. Those are important because whoever wrote the paper found some things that are outside the scope of their work, but interesting enough that it could validate for further research going forward. And that's kind of what we do. We want to advance the body of knowledge in whatever field it is. Step two is finding and organizing your data, organizing your ideas and concept. Identify some salient terms, recurring ideas, language, patterns of belief that link people and setting together in the most intellectually challenging phase of the analysis. This is Marshall and Ross had written this, and I thought it was an interesting quote. And I carry this quote for the past 10 years because I think it's one of the most important things to think about when you're organizing your ideas. You can go off to a million different tangents when you're looking at some data. You want to make sure you find what you're looking for and stick to it. Make sure that the ideas are there. Make sure you see the patterns of belief that might link people. You may be doing something on autistic children. You want to stay focused on that. I recall one time I had a student doing an actual study on some kindergartners, and all of a sudden she's looking at something different that involved the parents of these kindergartens. Totally off of her paper, and she kind of went off to a tangent and was starting to look at different things. You have to stay focused when you're working. Sometimes you got to put reminder stickies, like right on your computer. Say, "Stay focused. This is what you're doing." That's all interesting and everything, but you got to keep your eye on the prize, because you'll be doing this forever, even though it may be more interesting than your original thinking. So what to look for in your words and phrases. So you wrote all this stuff down. You went to MaxQDR. You plugged in all the words. You typed everything in. You did everything you could. You highlighted things. So you look for stuff. You look for what to look for is you look for behaviors. You look for different ideas. You look for how things are happening that might be important to your work. I cut this is one old example that I was talking about tuberculosis data. It is what it is. I just want to make sure that this is an example so you can see perceptions among family and community. Someone interviewed someone. The researcher interviewed somebody, and they wrote down everything, and they started highlighting things like concerned and worried. And you can see when you highlight it, you'll end up getting these good data points. So you want to make sure you keep a list and see if you find some consistency on it. So these are things that you're looking for. Let me pause this.